Okay. Hello. I hope you can hear me. I haven't really tried this before. I think I can see myself in that little box. I'm coming to you all from my humble abode down in the far, far away land of Scarborough. So obviously we did not, and I hope you can hear me. Otherwise, this is gonna be a big waste of my time. So obviously, we did not get to have class today because everybody was down at the science fair. All your projects were absolutely stellar. I was very impressed by you all. You're all such brilliant young people. I say that being like 5 years older than you. But anyways, so what we were gonna do is talk about the 1920s. So we finished up World War One, imperialism, the progressives, World War One. Now we're getting to the 20s, and I'm sure you've all heard the nickname the Roaring Twenties. Okay, but we're gonna get there. So on Tuesday, when I see you next, we are going to do our whatchamacallit, our Shark Tank for 1920s technology. So there's a whole bunch of new things that are really seeping into the mainstream during the 20s, which are part of what make it the Roaring Twenties. And a lot of things that we would come to know today, like it says right here in the title, cars, telephones, and movies. Now, there have been silent movies for a couple decades, but now we're getting the world's first so-called talkies. These are movies that actually have sound that accompany them, which is a big time change from the movies that had come before. So, the big thing we're going to be having to remember is that there's a lot of change going on in the 20s. Hold on. Is there a way to pause this? I don't think there is. How do I? No. You can meet my girlfriend. She just got home. I have to record a lecture. Do you want to say hi? Okay. That's a big old no. Does not want to say hi. That's okay. So, let's keep moving on. So, the three big things we've got are becauses and then what happens. So due to this new technology, now remember, we've talked about that rise of industrial capitalism in Unit 6, which on the militaristic side fed into World War One. Remember the reason why it was so big. Then on the social side, it caused all of these problems that the progressives are trying to deal with. And additionally, we use this term, I keep pointing as if you can see. I wish I could draw on the screen. Oops. I can't, but oh well. Consumer goods. So a consumer is anybody in an economy or in a society who consumes goods. So that is you and me. We're both consumers, and a consumer good would be something like a television, a car, the clothes you guys are wearing, your smartphones, anything like that. Okay? Now, with all this new stuff being produced en masse, what we're getting is not only are people having a better standard of living because they've got so much new stuff to do and so many new technologies and things that are improving their lives and making it not so dreary and dreadful. But you get people who are able to, especially with cars, move around a lot. They're not stuck in one little town their whole lives, Like Newport, Maine, you aren't stuck working in the shoe factory or whatever your whole life. You can get up and move on out of there, okay? So we're not going to really focus a ton on the social impacts. We're going to set that up because I want to talk to you about that in person when we talk about the flappers, the Roaring Twenties, really, like what that means, the Jazz Age, and Prohibition, okay? But the most famous new technology from the 20s, of course, has to be Henry Ford and the Model T. So, of course, Henry Ford founds Ford Automobiles. He's often considered to be one of those robber barons, although he really gets going a little after the robber baron era. So, but the big thing with Ford is that he's the first guy to really use assembly lines. Now, of course, you know what an assembly line is. We've already talked about it. In case you need a little recap, it is when you've got one car coming along, or instead of one person in your factory building a car all on their own, you've got Mallory, who is welding on the doors, and then it goes to Jake, and then Jake is putting on the tires, and then it goes to Hallie, and Hallie is painting it. You get the idea. We've talked about it before. But this, from Henry Ford in the Model T, this is where the car becomes ubiquitous and a symbol of America and American progress. Americans are the first to rapidly adapt to cars. It's the sign of status. If you've got a car, you're like, oh, I'm a red-blooded American. And it's a sign of, not just initially it was a sign of wealth, but thanks to Ford, it's so affordable. By like 20 years after this, most families have a car. Okay, now we'll talk about the social impacts of cars and why they were often called brothels on wheels next week. Okay, now there's some pictures. This is the Model T. This is the first mass-produced car. This is a picture of an assembly line in a Ford factory. So that guy right there, maybe that's Jake, and then there's Zen, and maybe Tim is making sure they're all doing their job. This is just some more early assembly lines. I know it looks quite dangerous, I have to say. Not OSHA compliant. So now we're not going to spend a ton of time on any of the other ones because we're going to do that in our Shark Tank on Tuesday. But some big threes I wanted to mention was the vacuum cleaner, the refrigerator, and the electronic washing machine. So these have really big impacts on home life and on women. I'll let you think about why this might really impact women, perhaps in a negative way, just coming off of the 19th Amendment. I want you to think about that and give me your answer on Tuesday. But I would like to point out that the electronic refrigerator destroys a huge main industry, which is ice. Maine ice from the Kennebec, from the Penobscot, from Moosehead Lake, Saco River was a sought-after commodity all around the world. It's like how you can find Maine lobster in Japan, in California, in the godforsaken land of Oklahoma, okay? Additionally, again, we're not going to really focus on culture today, but, for the first time with radio and with movies, everybody across the country is consuming the same media. All right, just like how Jake and Zen and Drew were going 6-7, 6-7 at the start of the year, and now so were little kids across the country. You have the same culture for the first ever time. Everybody's going to see a Charlie Chaplin movie. Everybody's going to see I think it's Judy Garland. I might be wrong. That might be a modern actor. I'm not sure. I'm not as hip and cool as I may seem, guys. But it's the first time that we can actually see a national, unified American culture, not just a regional culture spreading. This is also why it is in the 1900s that we actually start tracking generations. You've got the silent generation, the lost generation, the greatest generation, so on and so forth, because these generations actually start being defined by a unified culture. So the earliest movie stars, of course, Charlie Chaplin. I've told you many times about my infamous Halloween costume fail with Mr. Chaplin. He becomes the most famous of all, although he really peaks in the 30s. Douglas Fairbanks and Judy Garland. I was right. Judy Garland, of course, if you've seen The Wizard of Oz, then you'll know her, and Shirley Temple. Fun story about Shirley Temple. You may be a little too young to remember this, but in ye olden days of the early 2000s, whenever you would get a VHS tape or a DVD, or just watching TV in general, there would always be these old Shirley Temple ads for her early work. It was like, buy the whole collection. It was terrible. And it was in every movie, every TV show ever. And I was like 5 years old. I'm just trying to watch Wonder Pets. And it was all the time. It was so annoying. It was like those stupid... what's that stupid ad with the guy with the shades and then the emu? Some insurance company. It's really dumb. And of course, we cannot forget about radio shows. Radio shows were actually the podcasts of the day in a little bit of a way. So before people had TVs in their homes, you'd obviously have to go to a movie theater to go see anything on TV. Now, in order to listen to something in your home, you'd tune in on the radio, which most homes did have a radio well before they had a TV. So what you do is these companies would put on plays, but on a radio. So, infamously, one of my favorite stories is the War of the Worlds. You've probably seen the movie, heard about it, The Martians Attack Earth. So there was this radio company which broadcasted a production of the War of the Worlds, but they didn't preface it by saying that this is a radio show. And the way that it's set up is that it sounds like quite realistic. So a ton of people panicked because they thought that this was actually happening and that they were being invaded by the Martians. So they panicked, like, call the army, call the guard, get everybody in. Like, it was a whole panic across the whole state, but it cleared up. And again, it is shaped like you're a young person tuning into the radio, okay? You're going to hear the same radio show in Newport, Maine that some Italian immigrant in New York City is listening to as well. It is the same culture. Media and what you consume influences your culture dramatically, okay? Mallory and her Bad Bunny, who she adores, okay? Jake and Drew and Zenjamin with their 6'7", okay? And all the other insane things you guys say, all right? You're tarnishing the name of Gen Z, my generation. So next week, we're going to talk about the cultural and political stuff. The big things we're going to focus on are flappers, okay, and prohibition, and like what makes the Roaring 20s the Roaring 20s. Now, at this point, you can stop listening if you want to, because we're going to recap what I'm about to say next week. I just want to make a point, though. We are going to talk about nativism and immigration, but I will continue to speak, but I do not expect you to listen now. So if you can turn it off now if you really want to. But I'm going to keep going on to this, all right? So, I mean, goodness gracious, look at that picture. It looks like the average get-together of Nokomis gentlemen making poor choices. So, again, hammering home that point. Cities are growing. America is urbanizing. It is no longer a rural society, okay? Now, the big benefiters from this are women, immigrants, and people moving around the country. We will soon discover that most of the people in the country moving are African Americans. This is where we get the Great Migration, this period of when African Americans are moving out of the South and into the country. Now, this will lead us directly into the Harlem Renaissance and the birth of the Jazz Age, and it is because of the Great Migration. We have large African American communities in cities like Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, Baltimore, etc. Again, that's just a chart showcasing as we go. I keep pointing, as if you guys can see, from 1860 and the Civil War to 1920, where the urban population in cities has started outweighing the rural population. Today, I think it's like 80% of the country lives in urban cities, which is crazy compared to what it was, obviously. Again, just another graph. Yeah, actually, my face is in the way. Yeah, 2010. 80% of the country lives in a city, massively more than a rural. I mean, it's hard for us and for me. I mean, I grew up in Gardner, which is a bit more densely populated than Newport, but still, it's kind of crazy to think about. We do live quite isolated up in central Maine, and we think of Portland as this metropolitan area, but it's really not. The last thing I'll say is that with the growth of immigration, again, spikes after World War I. Tons of people are coming in, obviously. Their continent has been devastated by war. Maybe their homes are destroyed. They've lost loved ones. They want a new start, okay? But again, anytime in this country we see an increase in immigration, especially from places and people who we aren't familiar with, we see a corresponding spike in racism, or that term we've used, nativism. Now, if you recall, we saw the nativist movement once before. I'm not going to tell you when. I want you to tell me when I see you all on Tuesday. Okay, so look back through your notes. We have met the nativists before. Now, obviously, same then as now. A lot of immigrants coming from the Latin American region of the world. You get a lot of increased racism against them. It's this idea of pulling up the ladder behind you. Okay, so history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure as heck rhymes. That is it from me. I will leave you all be. I hope you all have a great weekend. Remember, I'm not And then Tuesday, we're going to do Shark Tank. Thursday, we're going to talk about flappers. You'll have to cover your eyes. We're going to be showing some scandalous amounts of shoulder and below the knee leg. It'll be awful. Prohibition and so on and so forth. Then we're on to the 30s, the Great Depression, the New Deal. That won't take more than 2 classes. World War II. And then we're on to the Cold War. We're closing in on the AP exam. So I think we're going to do a big practice exam coming up. I'm quite confident in all of your abilities. You've grown a lot so far this school year. I think we're going to do quite well. I am quite confident, and you know how critical I can be. So I hope you all have a great weekend. And now I have to figure out how to turn this off. I don't know. Oh, look at this. Before I turn it off, I painted this dude. It's from this thing called Warhammer. I don't know if you guys know about it. It's super nerdy, but he's pretty cool. Painted another one too. They're like super cool space soldier guys. They're pretty sick. It took me a while to do it, but I'm quite proud of it. Now I gotta paint some more. But anyways, how do I turn this off? Found it. Ta-ta.